also is empty of inherent nature.
Then, through the powerful Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva
Mahasava Arya Avalokiteshvara,
how
should then the son of the lineage of the fond perfection of wisdom.
He said that
And Bodhisattva Mahasava, this is the
Venerable Shariputra and the son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice
the activity of the fond perfection of wisdom. Like this, correctly and repeatedly, following those five ideas also. This is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. Feeling, discrimination, composition, practice, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition, practice, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no eye element and sound up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element.
There is no ignorance.
No extinction of ignorance and so on up to including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on the perfection of wisdom. The mind without obscuration, without fear, having completely passed beyond error, they reach the airport on Nirvana. All the Buddhas dwell 3 times, also manifestly to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the correct knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Om Gate Gate Paragate Parsangate Bodhisattva. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasava shall learn the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended Bodhisattva Mahasava Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you've indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasava Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in the entirety, along with the worlds of humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed. Spoken by the Buddha. Refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the highest assembly. Accumulations of may attain this state of the Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the highest assembly. On the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain this state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain this to be able to benefit all sentient beings. All right. It's Thursday afternoon. Maybe it's about time to watch YouTube or something. Yeah, just random. Sorry? All right. So, what I thought of doing today was to pick up from the point that Geshe-la started off today, the need to overcome fury. Then to briefly maybe start to look at cultivating the patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. But in order to pick up from the point of the need to overcome fury and to look at it from in a way that it is related to the previous section, let's go to the previous point under the section of refuting the existence of independent causes. Verse 31 comes under the heading of once one understands all my greatest to be like emanations, they say that it is unreasonable to be furious with them. So I wanted to also link it up with what Geshe said in the last couple of days, or I think at least from the beginning of the week, in following after His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teaching. So His Holiness has been teaching, I think that the last set of teachings was on the essence of eloquence, right? And as we see, he draws often from Chandrakirti's supplement to the Middle Way, which is dealing mainly with the wisdom aspect of the path. It also teaches the method side, but the main focus or the biggest chapter is chapter number 6, which contains an explanation of the way to develop the path of reasoning in order to determine selflessness, the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena. Which reminded me, by the way, just as a side comment, Chandrakirti's supplement to the Middle Way is such a wonderful text. This text doesn't, so we've studied that before, we did a few rounds of Buddhist study program, the BP. Then we decided to take 2 or 3 years off and to do the Madhyamika study according to the Masters program. So we were fortunate enough to do it. So it's a wonderful text. And Geshe mentioned it a few times, and I think that he said a few times that it'd be great to study this text. Now, I think that this text doesn't lend itself to doing, at least the 6th chapter cannot be done on a weekly basis, I think, or maybe it can be done, but I think that it's very ineffective. You need to be, I think, really immersed in the teachings and to also think about it a lot in terms of tenets in order to be able to make sense of it. So I think that as a general teaching, it doesn't really work. Whether or not we'll be able to introduce it into the advanced study program, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I do think is that at least the first 5 chapters that teach the first 5 perfections, I think that they do lend themselves to doing weekly teachings in the general program. So I'm not the one who would suggest it to Geshe, but if you guys are interested in at least doing some of the study, then you can make that request to Geshe. I thought that could work out in terms of at least studying some of Chandrakirti's work.
Is it the kind of text where you could take the 6th chapter, getting at the selflessness of
yeah.
Is it possible that you could just do that chapter for the advanced program? Or would it have to sort of come with the prelude of the previous 5 chapters, or can it stand alone?
It can be done as a standalone chapter. It can be done, but since the 6th chapter is the bulk of the text, it doesn't. Even if you cut the first 5 chapters, you're not really cutting much. You're cutting just a few dozen, maybe 20 or 30 pages, whereas the bulk of the text is still the wisdom chapter.
Is there something to the way the same as the entrance?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in Tibetan, the way that supplement to the Middle Way was translated was from Sanskrit is Umara Jukpa. So Jukpa has a variety of meaning. Uma is Madhyamika or Middle Way. Jukpa has a variety of meaning. When Chandrakirti explains the title of the text, it says that the text is based on Nagarjuna. The root text for Chandrakirti's text is Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise on the Middle Way called Wisdom, right? Of the root of wisdom in short. So Nagarjuna focused on wisdom. What Chandrakirti did was to take Nagarjuna's explanation and to give an explanation not only from the viewpoint of wisdom, but also to add to it the method side. And he did that through explaining the development of method and wisdom along the 10 Bodhisattva grounds, the 10 Bodhisattva bhumi. So the understanding that Chandrakirti provides to the word Jukpa in Tibetan is to supplement Nagarjuna's text, to add to it, because Nagarjuna explained only wisdom, and Chandrakirti adds to that the wisdom aspect. So Jukpa also has the meaning of entering, to enter into something, but also engaging.
It's
So
just,
yeah.
cancer psychic that's starting to speak that on Friday night.
Yeah.
We should get on the line.
And also,
Gender kitty now.
yeah.
What is that?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
You can get online
Hmm.
for only for a couple of weeks, is it?
No, I try to, each person's running up like for 48 hours. And then, like,
And also, I think that another invaluable source for that is Geshe Kesamwamo. So she's teaching now on a weekly basis the supplement to the Middle Way. She's teaching it to Dharma friends in Israel, the group that I'm connected with, but she teaches it in English, and also the teachings are available on YouTube. So you can, and they're, I think, open to everyone. So you can Google Kesamwamo, Chandakiti, or supplement to the Middle Way, or
Previously, Cancer Chef teaching Nagarjuna, the fundamental truths of Friday, but
Yeah.
it's now changed to gender kitty.
yeah, now it's teaching from Chandakirti's text. So how do we link it up to what I was wanting to do today? So, Isan has mentioned a few times some verses from Chandakirti's text. He also mentioned the significance of the text. Geshe also mentioned that. And part of the things that, no, a few of the things that Geshe said in the last few days are taken from Nagarjuna's explanation and also from Chandakirti's explanation. I thought of just repeating that because I think that if you hear that, but you don't really get much explanation about it, it doesn't really register. It kind of goes completely beyond, you know, over and beyond your head, let's say. So,
Through to the keeper. we say.
sorry?
Through to the keeper.
Yeah, to the bleachers.
Look at keeper standing behind.
So he said, so one statement that Geshe mentioned a few times is, the meaning of emptiness is not finding the imputed object when it is sought for. Do you remember that something like that came up?
The diamond.
Sorry?
The diamond on his desk. The diamond on his desk.
Yeah.
Not finding it.
Yeah, he mentioned that in relation to that, but I think that the diamond on his, I can't remember how he used that, but yeah.
You're saying that's not enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was saying that it's not enough. But to begin with, it is said that not finding the imputed object when you look for it is the meaning of emptiness. You find that actually that statement, I think, also in scripture, which means that when you do a streamlined meditation on emptiness, you begin with, first of all, identifying what is the thing that you want to negate. What is the object of negation? You need to do it precisely. If we keep it short here, what we're negating is inherent existence. So we're identifying our object of negation as an inherently existing person or inherently existing phenomenon. That's the first step, to identify it precisely. So we need to have in our mind the right measure for inherent existence. What would be the implication of something existing inherently? So that process is entailed within identifying precisely the object of negation. That's the first step. The second step is to create in our mind an appearance of an inherently existing person. So although it doesn't exist, an inherently existing person doesn't exist, still we want to create in our mind an appearance of an inherently existing person, and then tell ourselves that if that inherently existing person does exist, I have to be able to find it somewhere. So, for example, we have a grasping of ourself as inherently existing. So often the meditation instruction that is given in relation to that imagine that you find yourself in an extreme situation where you're being chased by a dog or carried by a raging river, or that someone accuses you of being a thief or a liar and so forth. So there's a strong sense of self or me that arises in your mind. And the appearance that you get is an inherently existing I or me. So you have identified the object of negation, an inherently existing I. Then you make it appear strongly in your mind. And having done that, one side of your mind starts to analyze that which appears to your mind, an inherently existing person. And using an analytical process, you're trying to see if you can find it. can you find an inherently existing person in the body, in the mind? Can you find them as being a different entity from the body and mind? Right? So there are different procedures that you could use in order to look for that independently existing person, inherently existing person. If you cannot find it, or not finding it, is the meaning of emptiness.
So that's sort of it's a classic presentation that you just gave us there on meditating on emptiness. How many times do you need to do that?
Oh, thank you. You need to do it over and over again.
Why? You come to the same conclusion every time. Like I sort of sit there and go, yeah, right, yeah. Like I come to the same conclusion. Like it just seems to me to be pointless. Once you have seriously and at depth come to that conclusion, it's the only other opportunity that I feel as though that it's appropriate to have that argument is when I'm feeling like a sore thumb. Then I can see something there. What is going on there now? Then I can apply that same argument when I'm experiencing an inherent I. But I just when I'm not experiencing the inherent I.
So I have 2 points that I want to make with respect to your question, because it's really timely. It's a good point in time to ask it, because first of all, what we want to, there's another statement that is found in scripture that says not seeing is the highest seeing, the best seeing. So not seeing what you're looking for, not being able to find that I is the best seeing. That's the seeing of emptiness. So I think that about 6 or 7 years ago, or 8 years ago, Kajula was here. It was, 2014. 6-7 years ago, yeah. So it was before Geshe Tsultrim came here. Geshe Jamu was still here. So Mayo was at the back of 2013 and 2014. It was 2014. 2014. So it was, I think, not long after we finished the middle way study, and she gave her set of teachings, and we also had some discussion with her, and someone asked her questions about something similar to what she said. And she said that if realizing emptiness would have been so simple as just you're looking for something and you can't find it, everyone would have long ago would have realized emptiness. It would be so easy and so simple for everyone to realize emptiness. So she said that, of course, it's an important, I'm paraphrasing what she said and also constructing it from memory. So of course, it is a necessary procedure to go through to see that there's something that appears to your mind, but you can't find it. Not only you can't find it, you go through different argumentations that demonstrate how it is not possible for it to exist. So we had a kind of, she said that at that point, and she said, if anyone would have done that meditation and reached that conclusion, they would realize emptiness. Obviously, it's not enough. So we had a lot of discussion in relation to that, like back in the days. And this is what His Honor said a few days ago when he was asked about it in the Q&A session. And this is also what Geshe mentioned in the last few days with respect to realizing that things are like illusions. So it seems that there are two things that need to be combined together. So you need to do that meditation, but also not just to look for the imputed object and not to find it. You also need to stay for some time in what is called space-like meditative equipoise, which means that you have negated something. And you need to have negated it in that you've looked for it and you cannot find anything. You need to remain for some time in that mere vacuity, that mere absence of the object of negation, without allowing anything to come into your vision instead of it. So emptiness is what we call a non-affirming negation, right? which means that you negate something, but you do not affirm anything in its place. So you're just negating an inherently existing person. You're not suggesting anything else in the place of an inherently existing person. So let's say, just to illustrate it, I would say that Jason is not here. I'm just negating in that statement the existence of Jason here. I'm not affirming anything else. I'm not saying Jason is not here, but Chucky is here. I can also say,
Doesn't it affirm Jason though?
no, you just kind of negate Jason is not here. Yeah. If you say that, for example, the person that is not here is Jason, or Jason that is absent, then your focus is on Jason, not on whether he's here or not, right? So if you say the non-presently Jason, then you affirm Jason. But if you say doesn't exist here or is not here, you're not affirming anything in its place. So there's that mere negation, mere vacuity or negation in which you do not affirm anything in its place. So you need to to stay with that, to dwell with that for some time. But then there's a danger that you will therefore conclude that nothing whatsoever exists. The person doesn't exist. No, in the sense that you will be reaching a nihilistic point. So there comes the dependent arising component that is required. So although the thing in question is not found when it is sought for, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It can still function conventionally. It is a dependent arising. It arises in dependence on and in relation to something. It doesn't exist inherently, but exists in dependence on in relation to others, and conventionally. If you don't analyze it, if you don't investigate it, it can still function. There is an agent, there is an object, there is functionality that are tenable. So it seems that to bring them together would be to, first of all, realize that what you were looking for does not exist inherently, but then to supplement it with the understanding that therefore it exists as being merely imputed and depends upon others. It is a dependent arising. So when you realize that it is a dependent arising, it exists in dependence on others, you have the combination of emptiness and dependent arising. Once you realize that it is like an illusion. Right, so what is the meaning of like an illusion? And this is how I want to connect it with verse 31 and then 32. So just to look at the outline for a second, it says, once one understands all my greatest to be like emanations, to see that it is unreasonable to be furious with them. So verse 31 reads, hence all are governed by others, and through the power of that, they have no power. Having understood in this way, I should not become angry at all things that are like emanations, that are like illusions. So what is the meaning of, if you were to encapsulate the meaning of something existing like an illusion, something being like an illusion, how would you do it? Like if you try to state it in one sentence, two sentences, three sentences, just to try to get at the very heart of something being like an illusion. Can you attempt to do it? People here, people at home. Shannon?
It doesn't exist in the way that it is.
Bingo. That's what I was looking for. It doesn't exist in the way that it appears. What it appears,
But I was going to say like the image in the mirror.
yeah, like a mirror image in a mirror. Yeah, that's an example of that, but I think that which is correct. But you know, what I was looking for, like in one line that would nail it, it doesn't exist in the way that it appears. So all Buddhist schools of thought agree that mere illusion, something being just like an illusion, is that it doesn't exist in the way that it appears. Like for example, like a reflection of a face in a mirror. So in a mirror, they appear nose and eyes and so forth, but they're empty of being eyes, nose, and so forth. They do not exist in the way that they appear in the mirror. So in the sense that the reflection doesn't exist in the way that it appears. In the mirror appear eyes and so forth, but the eye in the mirror, the face in the mirror, is empty of being a real face. So it doesn't exist in the way that it appears, right? So being like an illusion means that it doesn't exist in the way that it appears. And when we consider other people like being like emanations or like illusion, this is what we need to think of. They do not exist in the way that they appear to us. So how does it help us to combat anger? Well, what do you think? Like, what's the relevance of that in relation to cultivating patience, of certitude, being certain about the Dharma?
You're like getting angry at an image in the mirror. Angry at the-
Well, if someone is punching you, they are punching you, right? So is it just like a mirror punching you? I mean, you experience pain.
If you actually realize that,
If you realize that there are like emanation, then it would be like that, you say.
it's much more like that.
It's
You know,
not
progressively with respect to how great your realization is.
It doesn't exist independently.
It doesn't exist independently. The person that is punching you does not exist independently.
Causes and conditions resulting in that.
Yeah, they don't exist independently, and the cause and conditions result in that being, you know, in that situation in which you are punched.
From my side.
The punching and even you being the you being punched also appear like they were dream images or a reflection in the mirror. If you really realize it, so the punching, the being punched, the puncher will appear like illusions if you have that realization. So it doesn't matter whether you're being punched or being held. You truly realize it.
Well, it's like that story that His Holiness tells of a High Lama that had escaped from Tibet, and he had arrived at Dharamsala, and he'd gone to visit His Holiness, and they were talking, and His Holiness said, how was it? You know, how was it? He says, I almost lost my compassion for them. I mean, no, he was tortured and everything like that, and that was his biggest fear, that he would lose his compassion for them. I mean, for somebody to respond in that manner implies that, you know, he has a degree of realizations, and in spite of the torture, he never became angry. He almost did, but he never became
Yeah, for me, it would have taken much less to become angry.
Yeah, well, precisely. I would be blurting out and wailing, but
Shannon, did you want to?
It's very closely related to what I was going to say. So if you have, it seems like if you have that realization, that it just would be a very natural progression that compassion would become very strong. Right.
So Eva is saying not to anger with an actor on stages. She is directed by the script, producer, director, etc. So I think that all of you are kind of making points in relation to what I had in mind. You know, first of all, when we now this whole section comes under the heading of arresting fury with respect to those who cause us harm. You know, so when you think of a harm doer and what happens, how we react to a situation when someone is harming us, we become sometimes enraged or offended, hurt, distressed, disappointed, and so forth. And what dawns to our mind is a person, the harm doer, as if they exist completely in and of themselves, independently. They exist inherently. And we react based upon that appearance. You know, we assent to that appearance. we respond to that in a very emotive way, right? So here we say that, well, first off, we shouldn't react with such a strong reaction because there's what appears to my mind. And then there is another level of reality. They do not exist in the way that it appears. So currently, we haven't realized emptiness yet, or I can say with respect to myself, I haven't realized emptiness yet. So I can remind myself again and again that the person doesn't exist in the way that it appears, but it's completely up to me to make sure that I take the import of that statement, that they are like illusion. They do not exist in the way that it appears, and I try to work with it in my mind in order to reduce that anger or that sense of discomfort or disappointment or hurt that I experience when something like that occurs. They do not exist in the way that they appear to me, and therefore the basis of my reaction is already a bit shaken. It's, when someone punches you, the pain can be there. Physically, the pain exists. When someone attacks you verbally, your mental pain is still there. But you can lessen the pain of the physical pain or the mental hurt, let's say, the mental reaction, by saying that I react because I react in a certain way deeply, because I take them to exist in a way that they appear to me, but they do not exist in that way. They do not exist inherently. They exist in depends upon cause and conditions, upon the collection of parts. And in the end, they exist as hamdware. It depends upon my mind that sees them in that way.
Wouldn't there actually tie up into the path of seeing? Because then you have a body in the nature of mind.
Yeah. From the path of seeing onwards, they would not be able to. You will not experience pain.
But it's, I've got.
I think so. Yeah. Haven't got there yet.
Is nectar. Can I just read out what they say? Because I think they put it. They say nicely about specifically verse 32.
Yeah, it's good that you bring it up because I also wanted to read that. I didn't bring my.
I'll let you read it.
So do you want to read it? Or
That'd be better if you could read it because everybody else will read it.
although I don't have a voice that is as nice as yours. But anyway.
It's not true. I just wrote it.
So verse 32 or verse 31, which one do you?
32.
Two. So let's link it up. Just before we do that, let's just then read through the need to overcome fury. That's verse 32. And it starts with opinion. What will counteract it? Counteraction would also be inappropriate. The response is, it depends upon it, the continuity of suffering will be severed. It is not inappropriate. So before I read that, another point that I wanted to make with respect to that is that you hear it mainly with some of those discussions that you would have with other Dharma friends. They will give you a Dharma advice, which is like, don't worry about it, it's all empty. Now, which to me sounds like, always like an empty statement. What do you mean, don't worry about it because it's all empty? I mean,
it sounds like avoidance or nothing.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't exist. Don't worry about it because it doesn't exist. Yeah. So of course, when someone is harming us, the harm does exist. It doesn't exist inherently, but the harm is there. Right? It is there as a dependently arisen phenomenon. So when we hear those statements, don't worry about it because it's empty. There's not. Take it easy. It's all empty. At least my reading of statements like that is, well, the way that I perceive a situation is if it exists independently out there, outside of myself, without me seeing that situation as existing inherently. So when a certain person comes up with a blank statement, don't worry about it, it's empty, rather than thinking that it doesn't exist at all. It's more like just losing your fixation on things existing independently in and of themselves out there. Come to see that as a dependent arising. Not only that person that is the hamdware acts in that way because they're angry because they're controlled by anger. Anger is controlled by other causes and conditions. There's nothing that you can point at the end of your analysis investigation. But also, it is not unrelated to me because I also have created cause and conditions for experiencing that. So it's all a dependent arising. So, Khenpo Kumpen's explanation of section 32, verse 32 says, given that all things are like magical apparitions, without true existence, it could be argued that it does not make sense to oppose anger with patience. After all, what anger is there to be opposed by what antidote or person? For there is no doer and nothing done.
That's what you were just saying.
Yeah, don't worry about it, it's all empty. Yeah. On the ultimate level, this is quite true. But if we confine ourselves to the conventional level, the relative truth, it is on the basis of the cultivation of patience that the continuum of infernal suffering and so forth, which is the consequence of hatred, is severed. There's nothing inappropriate in this. On the contrary, it is indeed highly reasonable. So, in sense of what Khenpo Kumpen is saying, that someone might say, no, will come up with that statement, either that don't worry about it, it's all empty, or in a way that is more related to what Shantideva says here. Shantideva says all things are like emanation. If all things are like illusion, someone might think that therefore they do not, doesn't mean that they do not exist at all. If they're like illusion, they're not true, they are not there in reality. Is there any suffering to be overcome? Are there any afflictions to eliminate? Is there any anger that I need to oppose? And are there any antidotes that oppose it? Is the cultivation of patience enough, or will it work in order to conquer something that is like an illusion? So what will counteract it? Counteraction would also be inappropriate. Shantideva says, it depends upon it, the continuity of suffering will be severed. It is not inappropriate. So he says that conventionally, so although things are like an illusion in that they do not exist in the way that they appear to exist inherently, but they do not exist in that way conventionally, without analyzing, without investigating it, suffering still exists. It is a result of negative action. It is a result of afflictive states of mind. Also, similarly, the antidote of patience still works conventionally. So it can be, so conventionally, all those different things still work.
Well, I think even though there's someone standing in front of me screaming at me, and I know that, yes, my karma has something to do with that, their delusional mind, their causes and conditions and all of this sort of stuff, I can understand that there are all these reasons why that's happening, and it's not just like an inherent, it's not just somebody standing there screaming at me. But at the same time, I still have to do something about it right now. So that's more like the conventional. I actually do need to practice patience. I do need to do something to at least not make this situation worse.
Well, we certainly need to do things about situations when they occur, particularly if we have the power to do something about it. Then at the point in patience, this here of patience of certitude about the Dhamma is to face the way that things appear to us when we get angry, and remind ourselves that when we get angry, things appear in a particular way, but they never exist in that way. So we react to things, we cultivate patience. Also in reminding ourselves that things do not exist in the way that they appear. Tone it down.
And it really is like it would be a great default mind transformation tool to use in the face of a lot of things. A lot of things. You know, it really is a tool, patience, that you use when when nothing else is going to work.
Yeah.
When all else fails, just practice patience. Just be prepared to sit with it. You know, it's because it does conjoin emptiness and compassion in the way it works too. It does conjoin both those two. But you know, sitting with it just means that you're not doing nothing. You're doing a lot. You know, you're sort of working with stuff in your mind, so you don't get angry or you develop the compassion, your understanding emptiness. So you know, it's in some ways I found that when I was a mother, single mum, that's the hardest thing to do. Practice patience with your kids. You know,
So we'll say that it's the last resort, though.
No, I'd say
first resort, you think.
first, second, third.
Well, that's right. Yes. You're absolutely right. You know, I think I agree. You should try it really right up right away.
Well, you know, the chapter on patience is one of the biggest chapters in Shantideva's guide, you know, so of course, I think that it underpins the importance of the practice of patience, and also the way that Shantideva covers that or explains that is not, first of all, dedicating one section to patience that willingly accept suffering, then another section to patience of certainty about the Dharma, and then another section to the last one. But it says, when this situation arises, this is how you tackle it with the 3 cups of patience. So the 3 cups of patience can be applied to one situation. So you look at one situation from many different perspectives. You know, so you need that really integrated way of method and wisdom, even with respect to a single situation. You know, so for that reason, it is, I think, such an extensive practice patience. And it's not only when someone harms us, you know, we get angry in so many different ways, or that we put ourselves in situations where we cannot tolerate suffering. You know, so even if there is no external harm doer, often there's a certain situation that we will deal with, and the mind is full of anguish, despair, disturbance, agitation, and so forth. So those are also situations to willingly accept suffering, patience of certitude about the Dharma, patience of paying no heed to harm done, and so forth.
I mean, that's after you've tried, you know, there's something you could do, you think you can do, you do it, you know, I guess that's what I mean. It's not the first thing you go to with patience, because you can apply, you know, behaving like a piece of wood. You know, there are other things you would try first. But yeah, but when they all fail, that's what I meant.
Could you please tell me the 3 types of patience?
What are they?
Yes.
Well, there's patience of willingly accepting suffering. Sorry?
Disengage eye contact, just so I can write it down, no disrespect. Is that right?
Yeah.
Just writing it down.
Yeah. Writing it down.
Yes. Sorry.
He is writing it down.
Okay. Patience of willingly accepting suffering. Patience of being certain in the Dhamma. And patience of paying no heed to harm that was done to you. Or you can say another way, patience that disregards harm done. Patience that disregards.
Is that forgiveness?
It might be an element.
Yeah, it might be an element to it. I mean, in English, we use the word forgiveness, but it is not, there is a word for that in Tibetan, but I think that the word of the practice of patience that disregard harms is even, I think, deeper than that, more extensive. So Olaf is saying, I think for most of us, avoidance of confrontation is the best course of action. Yeah, I agree. I'm not a confrontational person in general. So if there is a conflict, normally I prefer to just move away. So Graham is saying, what about when someone is kind and compassionate towards us? Is that also just an illusion? It is like an illusion in that.
So Christine just corrected it to not an illusion, but like an illusion.
Yeah, it is just like an illusion in that they exist, they appear to be kind and compassionate inherently. Like when you think of, for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, still appear to us to be inherently compassionate, right? There's that inherently existing compassion that appears to us. So His Holiness is compassionate, but it is an illusion like compassion that doesn't exist inherently. Sounds very profound. It's quite simple. It doesn't exist inherently.
Oh, it just sounds.
It is just like an illusion. All right.
I remember when the first month-long retreat, I went to Lama Zopa's Maha Mudra in Adelaide, and there were all these signs around saying, you know, imagine that it is a mirage, you know, imagine reality is like a dream, and he had us sitting up for hours. That was before His Holiness had told him not to teach beyond 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. So we were sitting a long time. And that's, you know, I was absolutely desperate for a break as a single mother at that stage. And, you know, I really needed to go because I was always getting quite angry with my kids. It was, I think my son was probably around 12, 13, which meant my daughter would have been about 7. So, you know, I'd gone through a lot on my own already, difficult times. And for that month, I went back. I had no anger for 2 years, for a good 2 years. It was incredible, but I just I did not show any anger towards them all anymore. And, you know, so obviously I was practicing a lot more patience, but, you know, having that drummed into me for that month, perceiving all things as an apparition, as an illusion, I think it's a very powerful mantra in itself, you know, that you really take that on board, that reality is like a dream.
Well, one of the advices that Lama Tsongkhapa gives in the 3rd chapter of the Lamrim Chenmo, which explains how to develop special insight. It says, and this is actually one of the sections that I was reading during the break. I thought of pulling out something about like an appearance. But anyway, it's too late now. So it says that you also should train yourself in between sessions in reminding yourself that things are like an appearance, that are like illusions. So you go out and different things appear to your mind. And they appear with a certain either allure, right? So we constantly react to them. I like it, I dislike it. It's pleasant, it's not pleasant. It's good and bad and so forth. So it says, remind yourself in between sessions that things do not exist in the way that they appear. They're just like illusions. They're just like apparitions. They appear in one way, but they do not exist in that way. So just relax your fixation on those phenomena. And it's good to have that experience of, for a long time, having no anger, because then it gives us a glimpse of how would it be like to have a life, to have a mind that is completely free from anger. You know, if you have had that experience of an extended duration where your mind was quite peaceful, quiet, there was relatively more joy or happiness, you can appreciate that later on when you get angry again, kind of think, how can I get back to the zone, you know, to how my mind was before? That would be the benefit of not having not having hatred, anger, resentment, spite, and so forth.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten as angry as what I did prior to that time. Just that after 2 years, I noticed that aggravation did slightly begin to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just amazing though. It was amazing.
So then verses 33 and 34, let's look at them. They give us a summary of this section. So when seeing an enemy or even a friend doing something incorrect, something that you dislike, something that is not appropriate, by thinking it arises from such conditions, I shall remain in a happy frame of mind. If things were established with one's freedom, since no one wishes to suffer, suffering would not occur to any embodied creature. So you could say that also if things would exist independently from cause and conditions, it would be just enough for the Buddhas to wish well for us, and we would be well without us having to create cause and conditions for that. So,
Hence the permanent, the principle.
so you like the principle?
Easy way.
Principle tricky.
Easy.
Oh, hence the principle, I said, yeah.
We
Yeah.
just. And world man.
Easier said than done, isn't it? So, then we have cultivating the patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. So the section, I think, the first section and the second section is, both of them are quite, I think, clear. Engaging the mind in the method of compassion. So also compassion is like an illusion. It doesn't exist in and of itself. It is a dependent phenomenon, which means that if you cultivate cause and conditions for compassion, it will arise. That was one of the things that Geshe mentioned in his session. So it says some sentient beings cause themselves harm due to the lack of understanding. And they even kill themselves due to the lack of understanding. So it's not amazing that they harm others. As I was reading through that at home, it reminded me that many years ago, as I was hanging out at the plaza, it was Friday evening, there was a brawl. Two, I think, early 20 girls were kind of having like a real go at each other. When you look at them, they were completely crazy. They were like, screaming and so forth. But before that, I had a look at them and they were dawdling on high heels. And it seemed to be really uncomfortable, really, really uncomfortable. It looked like they were in pain of just walking. And then when they started to have a fist fight, I thought myself, like, it doesn't really there's no wonder that they would go completely crazy and hit each other if they've been walking like that and also inflicting that pain and harm upon themselves. There is no wonder that they inflict also harm upon others. So we behave like that, right? So if we inflict so much harm upon ourselves with ignorance, anger, attachment, pride, and so forth, there's no wonder that we inflict harm upon others. Anyway, I don't know if this analogy works, but
It's an interesting analogy.
yeah. Well, I just thought of myself. I remember thinking that why do people still do it? No, I was wondering at the time, why do people, for example, wear high heels or go through painful process of tattooing and so forth? I wanted to have a tattoo once. Starving diets and so forth. So anyway, there's no wonder. Rolling on thorns. Yeah, when you look at, actually, when you put it in context again, when you think about it in terms of ascetic practices that have been done in India, people are still doing. Sometimes you go through those big religious festivals in India and you find those Indian yogis that they have been rolling on the ground for decades. That's the meaning of, that's the way of moving from one place to the next. There are those who take a vow to always with a hand up. There are those who do not cut the, yeah. Yeah, sort of ascetic practices. So, people do all sorts of stuff for liberation. Yeah. Yeah, that's done in the islands, right?
In India.
In India, okay.
But also someone, a Westerner, did it as an art.
Yeah, that guy.
The guy that was really hooks through himself.
Yeah, putting himself in that was really.
So again, when we think of cultivating the patience that pays no heed to those who cause harm. So, someone is harming us and we want to tone down the inability to bear that suffering. So we remind ourselves that there's no wonder that a person is harming us. They could even harm themselves because of anger. They're completely out of control because of anger. They're completely out of control because of their affliction. So not only they can cause harm to themselves in this life, but also because of anger and the actions that they do, they cause themselves harm in future lifetimes. I mean, let alone others. We know that we can say that with respect to ourselves, right? So we get angry, we lash at another person, we say different things, we undermine the reputation of others, and there will be consequences for us in the future. So if we do it to others, there's no wonder that others also behave in that way. If we do it to ourselves, there's no wonder that others will do it as well. Anyway, without going into those verses now, maybe we'll cover them next time. I'm wondering if you have any questions before we leave it here for now.
What is the Tibetan term used for in verse 31 for emanation?
I would say that tulpa. So you have the word tulpa, which is normally translated as emanation, and then there is another word for illusion, gyuma. So I think that in this verse, the word tulpa was used just instead of the other word, gyuma, which is for illusion or apparition.
Yeah. Why is the view of the transitory collection not one of the key points in this? Because it seems like that is the ultimate cause of illusion-like appearance.
So why is the view of the perishing collection not used as the kind of the main point in that explanation?
What's that, the fear of the transitory?
The view.
The view.
The view.
Yeah.
Okay, the view of the transitory.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that maybe it's because my guess would be because here we're still dealing with the chapter on patience. So Shantideva just mentions that sense of ignorance. Things don't exist independently in a causeway. It doesn't go into great details. The view of the perishing collection is presented or is referred to in more details, in more precision in the next chapter. Yeah. So yeah, the root of another point that comes up in Chandrakirti's supplement to the Middle Way is that we normally say that the root of cyclic existence is the view of the perishing collection. That's the root of ignorance. Then the Middle Way Consequence School says that it is a root. It is not the root, because there are also other roots, like grasping at a self of phenomena, which is also a root of cyclic existence. All right. Thank you. Due to this virtue, I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhisattva not yet born arrive. May that but increase more and more. The land circled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. Powerful Chandrazik, cleansing Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Hold the subdued small waves as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Protect myself and others, please. There you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlton.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.